Yes.
I don't know if I've ever since got that blanket on. Richard, he bundles up, don't he? I guess we.
Yeah, he grabbed the blanket. He's got one, see right there, right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's that medicine he's on. He said,
I
makes
guess
him
that
cold
does
all
something
the
to
time.
him, I guess.
Thyroid disease does that too, like it comes.
Yeah, I wish I was that way. I burn up all
I
the
burn
time.
up.
So I'm just used to it. That's why I tell Trinity, I was like, if it's ever hot to you, you need to tell me because I'm already hot. I just assume I'm going to be hot. Like that's the way it works. So it comes with the territory of being a large man. If you will, I'll ask you to turn over to Psalms chapter 19. And I may hop back to 18 too, but you know, kind of given what we're talking about this morning with the idea of that godly reverence and fear for the magnificence of God, I really thought it'd be nice just to maybe just go through a psalm, and this one seemed to jump out at me as I was doing my reading and stuck with me. 18 kind of does a little bit better job of maybe describing God and giving that given that full picture of who He is in terms of strength. But I feel like 19 here really gives us a full picture of what He does in the day to day, and I really thought that it was I enjoyed reading it and really felt connected to it. So I think that's where we'll kind of go through it tonight and see where the Lord leads, and we might hop into 18 if it allows. So here in 19, I'm going to read through the whole chapter. There's only 14 verses. This is a psalm of David written to the chief musician. That's always important to kind of keep in mind who's writing what. So this would have been a primary psalm for the early church, and they would have sung this. And I actually found out recently, if you have an iPhone, you can actually there's an app in the App Store that has all the psalms put to music to be able to sing. It's called the Psaltery, and apparently you can find it. I couldn't find it on the Google store, so it's supposed to be on there, but it was not there. So if I find it, I'll let you know. I'll get you a link to it. Here's Psalm chapter 19, verse 1. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth His handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them hath He set a tabernacle for the sun, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoiceth as a strong man to run a race. His going forth is from the end of the heaven, and his circuit unto the ends of it, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof. The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. The statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold, sweeter also than honey and the honeycomb. Moreover, by them is thy servant warned, and in keeping of them there is great reward. Who could understand his errors? Cleanse thou me from secret faults. Keep back thy servant also from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion over me. Then shall I be upright, and I shall be innocent from the great transgression. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength, and my Redeemer.
14 is a very familiar verse, and a lot of times I've heard it used to end a sermon. I think Preacher West, do you remember that? You recall that? He used that verse like that to close out a service.
That's a beautiful verse.
It's a beautiful verse, yeah.
I'll tell you what, I think that Psalms 19 is, I read through it, it's just my immediate thought is this is the kind of thing that I think would be worth having memorized. Like this is the kind of, I can completely understand, yet again, I'm not shocked that God proves Himself to be right, but when you take a look at the early, or look at those who are, the Jews who were memorizing all of these, and it's just like us with songs, that'd be one to have on your heart, right? And as I read through it, once again, it goes back to that, there's no presumption towards God in terms of, like I said, humanizing him this morning, but instead there's such a great reverence put to him, not only by the writer in what he's bringing up, but also by nature itself. Because when you look at those first 6 verses, it's talking about how we have the basically the entire world itself, whether that's the sky or the day or the night or the sun, that they all speak to the magnificence of God every single day. And I think it's really interesting too, especially when you look at verse 3, there is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. When I think about it, this is Labor Day weekend and it makes your job much harder, Terry. But the thing is, when everyone comes to travel here, why are they coming here? Well, they come here to see the land. They come to see God's handiwork, right? The whole entire point is coming to visit this beautiful area that has been handcrafted by God himself. People travel from different countries, different places. They come from all over to see the beauty of God's creation.
It's a witness of God.
100%.
A witness of God. That's never been in a church, never read a Bible. Come see something peculiar, and they feel that witness. God created it, And if I'm an Indian or a Chinese or a Mexican, everybody can enjoy it.
Yes.
Everybody can feel it, It's that universal language.
It is. And the thing is I think that is yet again another proof of God to me, is the fact that when I stand on Roan Mountain and I look down, that there's a universal feeling of what that is, of that awe that I can sit and see. It's interesting to me, because you see those first 6 verses, like I said, those first 6, talking about and the thing is that when we look at, especially when you look at other cultures, or, more, I'll say, primitive type belief systems from our past, they always put the power in the thing, right? So you'd have the sun god, or the moon god, or the sky god. The god was the thing itself, because we were in awe of the thing, not even realizing that there was something greater that created the thing, right? And even if you look at Native American, I think about Native American folklore especially, because when you look at it, they have this huge plethora of gods that we tend to hear about in the stories and whatnot. But if you look, there's always one thing. It's like the one above all is essentially what they refer to it as. And it's even an understanding is that something had to have brought this here. Almost every culture has one, that there's a God that stands above all others. And it's well, that's once again telling us that there is something. Had to have been. And the thing is, the beautiful thing is that same God is the one who wrote this Bible, who brought it down to us. That same God is the one who had his son, who's equal with him, and is him, made flesh to come to this earth as a lowly human, to die, to redeem my soul.
And a lot of them always, way back before there was an airplane or anything, they always pointed to the heavens.
1,000%.
It was God, but it's not up this creek or in that ocean, somewhere here. It's up there.
Correct. Yeah, you don't really get it's only modern theology, or modern, I don't know what you'd call it, not theology, but modern belief systems that add God is all around us type thing. Everyone else always pointed up. Mm-hmm. You're right. And once again, this is not a deep sermon. This is just a sharing sermon. I read this and I was really floored by it, because what I think about is I'm trying to get myself into that right mindset, that I put God in the place that he deserves to be placed in, to understand that he's greater than the heavens and he's greater than the sun, and to really comprehend that and then give it the respect that it deserves, and that those things praise his name and are constantly talking about it. It's one of the things when Christ is talking about when he's here on earth and the people are telling them to be quiet. And he says if they were quiet, the rocks would cry out, right? Nature itself it demands the attention and the praise of God, in so much that it will take the place when we don't do the job. It's essentially what I think is beautiful to it. And once again, I think seeing people travel from across the world is something that is very much so the truth. And then you get into 7, right? You get 7 through 9, and now it kind of continues, but there's a series of statements here that are made about God himself and the tenets of him. And what beautiful, I think they're both beautiful and powerful, right? So when we look at the law, so the law of the Lord is perfect. What does it do? It converts the soul. And I think about this in terms of, it converts nations, right? When you look at the early parts of the United States, this was, the great experiment. That's what they've always referred to it as. This is the first time anyone had ever tried something that was really built upon Judeo-Christian values in terms of a government. Now, obviously, there were theocracies, and we know God led the children of Israel. It's very different. It's a very, very different situation. And when God is your actual, the actual leader of your people. But when you look at the early days of this nation, we see it built upon the principles and values that were put forth in this, which is the law. Right? So that law of God, this is perfect. If we followed it, we'd be much better off, both personally, nationally, and worldwide. But the thing is it does something different. And I remember reading that there have been a lot of statements from our founding fathers that the problem is that you have to have people who understand those values in order to keep the system that was set in place. Because if you don't have the people who value the same ideas and thoughts of that, the system starts to collapse on itself because it doesn't have the same sense of values. So what's interesting is that the only people who can hold then the system that works are the people who have had their soul converted, if you will. And it doesn't, that may not, obviously it works better if people have been saved, but I also would say that you have to understand the value of what is in this book in order to hold to what God has already put forth. Why? Because that law of the Lord is perfect. And even though we built an imperfect system based on it, it even converted government itself into something somewhat better than what we'd ever seen before. What a beautiful thought that is. Something was corrupt, and we can sit and talk about the corruption of government or whatever and get disheartened about it. But the law of the Lord is perfect. And I feel that's pretty good.
Yeah, it really is, and yeah, I've heard it. But, and then to make it plain, flip it the opposite. When it gets diluted to the point, and it just becomes a heathen country.
100%.
Pagan and heathen. There's no remembrance of God.
And it destroys everything from the inside out.
Total rotten.
Yes.
Total rotten.
So you see the law, and I think also the part of it too is that there is such a personal part to this, in that if I'm willing to devote myself to knowing the law of the Lord that is perfect, that it makes me better, and it doesn't just change the way I walk, it converts the soul itself. That it changes me fundamentally to something better. Secondly, and I think this is beautiful, the testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. There's two parts of this I think are really interesting. We talk about testimony. What does that mean? God doesn't particularly have, we talk about testimonies, and that is to tell what has happened, right? It's a witness, to serve witness to what has happened. So the thing is here, what is the testimony of the Lord? Well, the testimony for the Lord is His testimony of Himself. So when we take a look then, when God says something is going to happen, or that He is going to do something, what is the word we get for it? It is sure. It is guaranteed. There's no doubt within it that when God calls into His testimony, when He brings us anything He says, or says He will do, or says has been done, it is sure. And if I pay attention to that, and I put myself to it and learn it, then what happens is, even if I'm someone who is simple, there's a wisdom that comes along from understanding that God is true, and God has always been true, and that He will always be true. And there's a wisdom. Even if I'm a simple person by nature, it makes me wise to know those things. And why? Because I think it comes down to the idea that then I know where to put my trust. I don't have to be a 300 IQ person to be able to understand God and to put my trust in Him. But if I understand that His testimony is sure, and I put my trust in Him, there's a wisdom to it. And if I follow the things that are in this book, obviously we're looking back up to the law of the Lord, if I put my trust in Him and what He says, then I'm going to trust His law, which is then going to also convert my soul and make me wise. That's a beautiful thing. It builds upon itself. Then we go down to verse 8. The statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. So the law, so if you look at how the words law and statute, they're very similar. They're essentially the same thing. But I think of if I can kind of give the idea of where I feel like they're separate, the law, I think it applies to us more personally, whereas statutes apply more on a, like, I won't say societal scale, but you think of it more like what we would consider law today. So it's outside. It doesn't affect me as a person per se, but it might affect what I do because it kind of sets what's right and wrong. The statutes of the Lord are right. What do? They rejoice the heart. Why? Because when I know what's right, then I know I can rejoice when things are done correctly, when justice is served, when there's a rightness to it. And I know, because God is sure, the testimony of the Lord is sure, that what He said is right, then that means I can rejoice when I know He's given me a clear, here's what's right and here's what's wrong. I know where to go. And I can rejoice in what has been done correctly, what has been done, when things that have been done wrong are chastised and put right. Because that's the beautiful part of it too. There's a correction that comes to it. As long as I'm on that path, I can be rejoicing in knowing what that path is. As a happy part. Because that's one of the things that, as a person, I find myself very frustrated with. You know, you look at the law of not just our country, but the world as a whole. And I get disappointed because things are unjust. There's injustice everywhere. And you can find it if you want to look for it, you'll find it real quick. And I can get frustrated because to me, I like to see things done right. I like to see things done well. Well, I can rejoice because I know God does. That's the beautiful thing of it, right? I know for a fact He's going to do what's right. And He won't change. Why? Because He's sure. And why? Why do I know that He's sure? What does that Him being sure do? It also makes His law perfect, and if His law is perfect, then I don't have to worry about the statutes. They'll also affect everything else. It all plays in right together. The next part of that is the commandment, which is personal of the Lord, is pure, enlightening the eyes. I was reading, I can't remember if it was about business or I can't remember if I was watching a video. Anyway, I was reading a thing this week. It was talking about that people in leadership, almost like there's a statistic that they've been trying to work out, and then the numbers are higher than you'd expect. For people in leadership to have an ulterior motive when they tell you to do something, especially in a job, like it's not always that they just want the thing done, but that there's often something else behind it. And it's funny because we was talking at lunch today, and Dad was telling me about a situation that was going on with some stuff, and I was like, and he was like, and I'm pretty sure this is the reason why it's happening. I was like, oh yeah, there it is. There's the ulterior motive. I'm against this thing. Well, why are you against that? Because if we do this other thing, it'll benefit me. And it's like, oh, okay. So you're not really against this, you're for this. So here's the thing. I don't have to worry about that with God. So when He tells me a commandment, what's He want? All He wants is what's good for me. Why? Because that'd be the best of His will in my life. So when He gives a commandment to me, I know it's pure. And then the beautiful part is if I follow it, it shows me what is good for my life. It's enlightening. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have any darkness to it. It all plays together here in this part. The last two parts here, going back to kind of what we talked about a little bit this morning, the fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. And I think that goes back to my point that I was discussing with North Korea. I don't fear God because I think He is going to be this tyrant that comes in and forces me to do things. The fear I put to God is a respect. It's a reverential fear. It's a fear of, one, understanding who I am before Him, and two, understanding who He is, and then also understanding that there's a relationship between the two. And it's a beautiful part here. It's clean. It's not a dirty fear. It's not a corrupted fear. It's clean. It's pure. Enduring forever. So if I'm willing to put that in there, I can keep that. It sticks with me, it stays with me as long as I'm willing to follow it. And then the last part is the judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. So it's the only one that doesn't have a positive at the end. But what we see instead is that it's two things. When God puts forth a judgment, and it kind of makes sense when you look at the things before, one, I know they'll be true, but then also I know that they'll bring righteousness. I'd like to elect this person. I'd like to put them on the ballot. Wouldn't that be nice? If you could go in and you could say these things about someone who was running for office, that'd feel pretty good. I'd be excited about that. I do. It'd be the first time in my life I'm excited to vote. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So here we go down to verse 10. And of course, this part talks about the value of what God gives us, what He's providing in this situation is that more to be desired are the judgments, the fear, the statutes, the commandment, the testimony, the law of the Lord. More to be desired are they than gold, even fine gold. Not just regular gold, fine gold, which was rare and difficult to make, and it still is today. Sweeter also than honey and honeycomb. Not only are they valuable, because there's some things that can be valuable, but they're terrible to have. They're valuable and sweet. It gets both sides of it. And then in verses 11 through 14, kind of how they affect us. Moreover, by them is thy servant warned, and in keeping of them there is great reward. I really appreciated. I mentioned it this morning, but I really appreciated, Lester, what you're talking about with Revelation, right? That there's a specific, there's a blessing with knowing what's there. There's not many times in the Bible where a blessing is specifically associated with certain things. Normally, it talks about the blessings of God that are given to us, but there are in terms of the overall, there are a few instances in which a blessing is specifically associated with something. And that's one of them. Here's another one, where if I am willing to keep those things that God has given us, and once again going through that whole list, there is a great reward. And there might be, there can be, but there is. It's definitive. There is a great reward. And the beautiful part is it also warns me, which is useful too. So if I keep those things that I've heard, there's a reward that comes. But then we see in verse 12. 12 and 13 is interesting, right? Because they're reflective. I want to keep them because there's a great reward, and I know that I've been warned. Sometimes I have problems. 12 says, who can understand his errors? And isn't that the truth? Sometimes we know our sin. And we're very intimately entwined with it to deal with it. Sometimes it's hard to find it. Sometimes it's sneaky and it hides, and we think we're doing better than we are. And I think that that's honestly led to some of the greatest atrocities on earth. But what is the psalm writer here? We see David says, cleanse me from my secret faults. And it's not just the ones that other people can't see, but specifically the ones that I need help finding. Help me see the things that are in my life that I can't see for whatever reason. Cleanse me of them and help me overcome them. Why? Because then that'll bring me closer to Him, which then brings me into keeping His Word, which then leads to a great reward. It all ties in together here. And you'll notice here in verse 13, which is the other interesting one. So we have secret faults. Those are the ones that are hard to see. And then there's 13. Keep back thy servant also from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion over me. These are the sins that want to have dominion over us, because that's what's the implication here. These are the presumptuous sins are the ones we do, and I'd argue probably those that reoccur on a regular basis. The ones we do, we know they're wrong, but we're doing them anyway. And so the thing is, they're there, and they come in. And the thing is, what I love about David is David understands this. David's a man after God's own heart too, right? And he's saying, God, I've got secret faults that I can't see, and I've got the ones I know keep coming up, and they're the ones that are killing me. They keep coming back, and I do them over and over again. And the reason why they're presumptuous is I know they're wrong. But I also know that there's a part of me that says, yeah, but it'll be okay, God will forgive me. But he says, no, I want to be away from them too, because then I can be in the right place. And there's obviously, it talks about, I'll be upright and shall be innocent from, it says the great transgression, but the way that phrasing is here is like a great number of transgression. Like it's not like that there's one specific transgression. It's an Old English phrasing to talk about a great number or a big set of transgressions. So what it says here is that the idea of if I'm doing presumptuous sins, I'm just continually doing the same thing over and over again, which is kind of doubling up on sin. I'm not only doing the sin, but I'm also taking advantage of God's forgiveness, which is also sinful. And then also I'm intentionally ignoring His law, which is also sinful. So I'm getting like the 3-pack every single time I do it. I just keep piling them up. And so the whole thing is that keep me away from the ones I can't see. Cleanse me of them. And show me the ones where I'm taking advantage of you. which is interesting, isn't it?
Repeat sins.
Yeah.
Repeat sins. You know about it, you just do repeat.
Mm-hmm. And I think, because the idea of presumption, right, when people presume things, I don't want to say it's always arrogant, because that's not true. But there's almost a level of arrogance that comes with it. That's like one of the things that's like, you know, my mom fussed at me a lot about this. This is a poor example. When I was a kid, I was taught when you go into someone's home, you don't just go to their cupboard or to their refrigerator and just take what you want. Why? Because there's a level of, that's me presuming I am more welcome than I am, or presuming that I have access to things that I may not have access to. And Mom was always like, you always ask permission. Why? Because then I learned that there may be a line there. The problem is if I'm presumptive with God, it's that I walk in either ignorantly or arrogantly to a situation in which that I don't belong. I don't have access to it. And so I think that's the part here, the idea of a presumptuous sin, is that I either do it through ignorance, and I think that's kind of covered by secret faults. So the only one that's left is the sin that I do arrogantly. And by arrogantly, I think it takes God out of where He is, and says, well, I know You'll forgive me, so it's okay. And it's so antithetical to who God is. It's not about the fact that He'll forgive me. I don't want to sin because I don't, that spits in the face of God. So to do it presumptively.
It's like assuming that, you're assuming that God's gonna okay it.
Yeah.
So you're really putting yourself ahead of God.
1,000%.
You spot, I kinda know it's gonna be okay. I'm not gonna ask, I'm gonna do it, I'm assuming it's gonna be all right.
Yeah. And that, to me, I think that's maybe more dangerous than even the secret ones in a way, because they're done with knowledge. So, in saying, keep me from those, it comes down to that last part. It says, then, if I've been cleansed of my secret faults, and if I've not let my presumptuous sins have dominion over me, because that's the other part too, is they'll dominate you. They'll take everything and push you in that direction. Once I get past that, then I shall be upright, and I shall be innocent from great transgressions. So then we come down to 14, like you said, that final verse. It's beautiful. And that's a great prayer, I think, too. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in Thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. And those are the two most innermost parts of us, right? It's the parts that speak and the parts that do from the inside. And if the inside's right, it's from the abundance of the heart that mouth speaketh. So that's the same for the work of the life too.
Kind of like sending you away out in the world with this thought, or sending you home with this happy thought. And in the future blessing, may it be okay, acceptable.
Right.
So it's just this wishful, happy, pleasant way to depart.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing about this too is I'll finish with this. I'm going a little over, but my thought process on this is that when we come down to the end, this has been this psalm, I think, it lifts up God, it puts Him in His right place, and in the end, my point is I want to be acceptable, right? Because there is the assumption that if there's a part that is acceptable, there is also something that's not acceptable. And so the problem is if the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart are on something that's not, and I would say maybe not even, they're on something unacceptable, then what happens is I find myself farther away from God. And why would I want to be that if I know there's all these benefits, if I know there's so much surety, if I know there's something better, but I get pulled off to the side. And so there's this prayer, and it ends then with what I think is a proper way of crying out, because this is such a beautiful thing. Oh Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. And if you look at those particular words, that word for strength is interesting. You don't know the word for it? It's my rock. which is really curious given how the New Testament's set up, and church is built on the rock of Christ. We have that Petro. Beautiful part, I think, when we come to this, the end of a book that's written thousands of years before Christ exists, and yet there's a discussion of the forgiveness of sins in a way that is definitive. We see the part of this, that God is all of these things, but also in the most part of that there's a rock that I can build my life upon. The Bible's a beautiful thing. So if I can, I hope that that's a small thing. Once again, I'll tell you, Psalms chapter 18, if you get a chance, read through it. I was reading through 89 this morning. Once again, I think it was 89. Absolutely astounding in terms of the Psalms. And I think it's going to be my next little project. I want to just read through the Psalms and maybe put them into some categories for days I might need. You know, there's a lot of various things there. I don't need them all today. There's going to be a day where I'm needing one of them, and I know people have done this before, and there's a lot of them, but I don't do it for me because then it'll stick in my head. If I go buy a book, I won't remember none of it. But there's such a beautiful part, and the thing that makes me happy is that those were written by some of the wisest men who ever lived. At least the father of the wisest man who ever lived definitely wrote the majority of them, so that works out pretty good. So Will, I ask you to pray with me. I know it's been maybe a little bit different of a service tonight. It's worth lifting up God. It is, and giving Him some praise and worship. So we'll end in prayer. If you'd like to come join me on the altar, you're more than welcome, and we'll be dismissed from there.
God, we lift you up in prayer once more, Lord, thanking you for your blessings, thanking you for your love and your mercy, and God, thanking you for your magnificence, your surety, Lord, your certainty. The fact that I know tonight, I know for a fact everything you said is true. I can know for a fact that if that's the case, and I can know I've been saved. God, what a great blessing it is. And I thank you for it. Lord, I just ask that you'll help me to not take you for granted, but that, Lord, I might make it purposeful things that my thoughts and my heart, Lord, the meditation of my heart, Lord, are both acceptable in your sight. And God, that's the idea. So thank you. Lord, we're grateful to you for your blessings. And we lift you up in praise tonight, Lord, for the great things you've done. In your precious name, we pray these things. Amen.
Well, it's getting a little dark out there. You can help that phone? I got you. She was crab walking there.
I thought he was gonna break down. He said, something like he just spin around top, he spin around on her head.
I thought I could walk like that back here.
Oh, all the way back?
Yeah, I didn't make it.
You did a duck walk, wasn't you?
Yeah, I thought I could make it, but
I don't know if I can do it. My knees would give out on me. That's my days of playing baseball. It'd get me too bad. Appreciate you being out here tonight. Hope you have a safe trip home. It is a little nasty out there. So stay safe and hopefully you can stay dry. And we'll Thursday night, Isaiah 1-4. Yes, sir.
I don't know if I can take Thursday night.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Woo! I get to sit and listen. I'll be more than happy to. Well, then there you go. Something even more to look forward to on Thursday. And we'll take care of that. I'm excited for it. Thank you, brother. And then even more to be excited about. Praise God. Be safe going home. We'll see you on Thursday, 7 o'clock, Isaiah 1-4.
Watch the deer.
Watch for deer. Yeah, I passed 4 on the way here, so if they're out, they'll be running around, especially in the rain. So.
It's silver tonight when it's dark and rainy.
It'll be out there.
Oh, you gonna take it somewhere else? Okay.
It's the Holy Spirit and rapture.
Okay. All right. Well, then never mind. You get brand new things then. Lester will take care of that. We'll come ready to study then. Looking forward to it, and we'll see you Thursday night, 7 o'clock, and we'll take it from there. Praise the Lord.
Have a good week.
We're gonna try.